We're just a little aspect of we're like an appendage for it to use to accomplish that thing. And so
I've never been described as an appendage. I've had my appendages described, but not myself. I am the appendage.
A good solid appendage. Yeah. So that being said,
well, good morning and welcome to the episode. How do we value what we have to offer is the question.
Yeah.
And the challenge we have when we think that everyone already knows it, and why are we the ones to be offering it and potentially to be charging for that or to be compensated for that knowledge?
Yeah.
That's the question. We haven't formulated the question as well as we might have liked, but it is a very real challenge, right? Like,
yeah,
when you sent me that voice note and kind of raised this as an idea for today's discussion, I connected with it in the sense that, yeah, like there's a lot that I know. I've got an undergraduate degree, I've got a postgraduate degree, and I see a need in the market and I feel that I have something to offer. But then it's like, well, there's people who know more than me, like maybe they've already seen this or heard this before. And then I stop, then I don't do it. And then everything that would have allowed me to do professionally, personally, then just ends. And then I'm just back in the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
So what can we do to solve that challenge, do you think?
Yeah. So it is a good question. I think that the main point there that we're getting at is the perspective shift, that we shouldn't expect that it's a simple perspective shift, but it is powerful. Like if we think that what we have to offer has no value, then inherently we are expecting everyone else to know everything that we know, and basically demanding that they're at that level. And that might seem a little bit like aggressive or extreme, but at the heart of it, that's practically what's going on. And I think it's most of the time, it's really just an excuse we use because we're too afraid to put ourselves out there and share what we have. And so we, at least for me, like I know that I'll get self-conscious trying to share information because, and I think the other aspect is so much of the time, the people that we've seen sharing information, there's a lot of arrogance, there's a lot of even narcissism, and so we've come to expect that if you're sharing something that you have to be that way, but it's couldn't be farther from the truth. So yeah, so there's a way to share what we have with integrity, and with strength, and deliver it with strength without being arrogant or even without claiming that we know everything, right? It's just a clearness. There's also a trust in the self, in my ability to tell others about this thing without even while being vulnerable, in case someone shoots back a question like, yeah, well, how do you know that? Or, well, what about this? And so like we let the ego go down a little bit so that if that does come back, we can even say, I don't know that, or I don't know this, or I might think about it this way, but we have the willingness to put out there the things we've observed or we have experience in, and just knowing that there's a lot of people out there who are in a similar place to where we have been in the past, and that would find that information really valuable. I don't know, that's where I'm kind of going with it. What do you think?
So is there a distinction between, so I think obviously as a helping professional, counselor, coach, mentor, some of those professional identities that I've had over the last little while, like I kind of adopt the philosophy that the client or the young person or whoever I'm working with, they're the expert. Like I don't have the answers. I'm just the guide and the facilitator to help them find the answers, which does take a lot of the pressure off. Like there's maybe that tendency for a lot of people to jump in and give advice from our own expertise. But in that helping context, I'm not the expert here. It's like I've got tools and frameworks and processes that I can introduce And then that will help you to develop that inner conviction and confidence to take the steps that you might already know you need to take. So I find that takes a little bit of pressure off. But what would you say to, like, on the more technical side, where, you know, you and I were talking about Facebook ads, or, you know, like deeply technical skills, or AI, you know, talking to people about AI and what can they do to use AI in their business, or things that I don't even know how to talk about now because I just don't know it to the depth to even have a conversation about it. What would your advice be for people like that who have these really like technical skill sets and feeling confident to go and share that without seeming arrogant?
I think one kind of reality check is this the size of the internet, which is the reality that when you put out content or information on a given topic, there is the range of people in that audience is so vast that there's people that are absolute beginners who may never come across any other material except what you're putting out. And so it's even if you're not an expert in a field, you can still, because of that aspect, that you can reach so many people, you can still share just what you know, and it still has immense value to everyone who doesn't know that thing. I think the big differentiator is the ego side, right? And it's not that I'm sharing this information because it makes it, this is the distinction. It's sharing the information because someone will find it valuable, rather than sharing the information so someone will think I'm smart. That's the differentiator. And so if it's about what you can give before what you can get, then that makes all the difference. Because if it's about getting, then I want to get notoriety. I want to get the respect of those people watching the video. I want to get compensation, whatever it might be. But as soon as it's about what I can give to someone, then it doesn't really matter about what may be coming back at me as far as opinion or thought about me, because it isn't about me anymore. It's just about what I can give. And so if I can give some degree of value in that thing, and I'm focused on giving it, then naturally that leaves the ego at the door, so to speak. And so then we can just offer that thing, whatever it is, with integrity, and with a giving heart or a giving nature. Yeah, that's what I think there.
Yeah, I like the connection back to, and we talk about it a lot, that like service orientation and the giving and the what value do I have to offer, and not withholding that value for the sake of protecting the ego, right?
Yeah.
So in like a business setting, like where does the, like how does comparison, like how do we, I guess what I'm trying to say is like the competitive landscape, and there's a lot of people adding noise. How do we challenge that? Because I'm always conscious of that. It's like, freaking heck, there's like 1,000 people out there competing for the same person's time. And if I don't think that I have anything different to add, I think I already know the answer to my own question, but if I don't think I have anything different to add, why would I just add more noise to overwhelm that person even more? Because that is the challenge, is people are just inundated with noise. So how do we know that what we have is not just more noise?
Yeah, so two parts, I think. The first one is a simple perspective shift. Again, the nature of, just because we're seeing all of these other speakers in a given space doesn't mean that the people that we're going to be sharing with are going to see the same. The audience in reality is so large that there can be 1,000, 100,000 creators on a given topic, and there's still going to be vast majorities of the audience that are entirely ignorant, like they never even come across their content, because it's just the nature of the customer or of the audience pool is so large. That's the first part, and then the second part I think goes back to the giving thing again. It's like if we're offering something, then we're not looking for compensation. We flip the paradigm, and it's no longer about getting, even in the sense of business. And I think this is the big misconception, is that the ideology is so ingrained in us that in order to profit, we have to do it at the expense of someone else. But the reality is, if we give more, we'll always have enough. Like, we'll always get back what we need. It's just the laws of reciprocation. And so, it's interesting. It's an interesting study. If you look at some of the businesses out there, even Fortune 500 companies, or just massive organizations that are giving focused, there's always plenty. They always have, the people involved have abundance of resources, abundance of revenue, have abundance of joy, and like the culture is great, and you can see the difference. I mean, it's crystal clear when you look at two businesses side by side. And so I think the big thing is breaking that misconception, is that one being that in order for us to profit, we have to do so at the expense of another. And so if that's the idea, and we always give more than we ask for, then it changes, and the whole again paradigm, it kind of shifts. But it's a little bit difficult, because I think there's also maybe an evolutionary aspect at play, because we oftentimes think we have to outperform the others in our immediate environment in order for us because we had to compete for food and resources historically. But I think it's just not that way now. There's so much abundance, and so we're so much stronger also when we network and we work together and we work with other people. And so if we just flip it and we just see what we can give, then it comes back around very quickly. And then also, though, there's a big not necessarily a caveat, but another point, which is that we do want to think, if it's in business, then we want to make more money. That's part of the whole idea. So if that's the case, then there is a strategic aspect, or an intent aspect, which is, I think, scale rather than manipulation. So what I mean by that is, we think in order for us to make something really profitable, then we're going to have to manipulate someone into paying more for a thing, however that may be. But I think if we think about scaling what we can give, then we get both outcomes, which is we give first and we give more than we ask for, but then we also get an immense amount back. And so in order to do that, then by definition, you have to give an enormous amount. So then it just becomes a strategy game. It's like, okay, what can I do to maximize the output? And so that's a different ball game, rather than how can I squeeze the most out of a customer. And so then we start becoming resourceful, and we start identifying leverage points in a really interesting way, which is often involves working together, working with other people. And it's when movements or messages, or what be it, just the scale becomes enormous. It's like changing the world, reaching people around the globe, a movement that changes millions of lives, that type of thing. And it's all around upscaling the give, I guess. But yeah, I kind of got in the weeds there. But what do you think? What do you think about those bits?
I'll happily spend time in those weeds. Yeah. So how does that show up for you? Like, how are you, like in your business, let's say, how does that philosophy show up?
Yeah. So I think I gave this example before, but I was trying to get this new business model off of the ground, the Stoneclad Media, and was struggling with trying to identify customers and then identify what to offer them in terms of AI and technical infrastructure, because it's so vast and wide. So I was trying to identify that, and like trying different routes of obtaining customers, and then eventually I just I had a friend who was in need with a given thing. I knew I could solve the problem pretty easily, so just did it for him for free. I was like, let me take care of that. And then that very quickly evolved into him asking for other services, and then offering to pay me for this stuff, and then building a better, bigger business relationship, and one that has flourished since, and is growing. And again, this is really early on in this endeavor, but I've seen it in the past before, where it seems so contrary when we're thinking about profit, and it is contrary when that's the focus. But if we just flip it and just give what we have to give, then that comes back around very quickly. Not for it to sound woo or otherwise, but basically when it comes back around very quickly. It's just the laws of reciprocation. So yeah, so for me, it's just to sum it up very basically, it's just whatever endeavor or whatever business model you're running, if you just focus on giving the maximum that you can give in whatever the thing is, then it just naturally starts this cascade, and it builds a goodwill, and then people refer, and then you do more good work, and then you can just depending on the model, then you can scale that quite a bit. That's just my small insights and what I'm working with right now.
Yeah, I mean, what I've admired about, I guess, your journey to this point over the last couple of years is, and I guess it's like the space around AI and whatever, it's developing so quickly. So who's really an expert? If you're an expert today, you're probably not going to be an expert a week from now, unless you really have your finger on the pulse. But like, people go to uni or college or whatever for years and years and years, and even after all of that, they don't feel themselves good enough to then deliver that value to someone in need. And I think looking at your journey over the last couple of years, like, you've applied yourself to learning some of these niche skills and emerging interests. And like, yeah, you'll admit that you probably don't know everything, but you've found someone who needs what you do know, and you've taken the opportunity to give what you do know to that person. And I think that kind of, it takes, like, I just think about people who spend their lives at uni or whatever, or like even not at uni, just like in life, we're doing another course and another course and another course, and never feeling ready to like give that information or like pay that information forward. Whereas I think observing your trajectory, it's like and this is the perfect example. It's like, enough, and someone knows a little bit less, and you give that to them. And I think that's one of the important takeaways for like anyone listening to this. It's like, you don't have to know everything. You just have to know a little bit more than the next person. And that's valuable. That's an opportunity to give. We don't need to, like, and that is changing the world. Like, if we want to go back to that bigger thing, it's like, we all just need to give a little. And by giving a little together, we've given a lot collectively.
Yeah.
And we're constantly raising the bar. And whatever it is that we're each working on, or what we're each struggling with, we can move forward together. But if we're holding on, like, even if we don't think we have a lot to offer, even that little bit, if we still hold on to that little bit, it's like that's still holding someone else back. Yeah. And it's not about us. It's about, like, there's that famous quote. You're a lot better with quotes than me, but it's something like, the purpose of education is not knowledge, but action.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are we doing with the knowledge that we're gaining, and how we're using that to serve others and move forward together?
Yeah, it's like knowledge for knowledge's sake is just, at the end of the day, it's somewhat useless, at least in the context of humans, right? And the global environment. But I think you also said something important, which is, like, to sum it up, if I may, I think it's like the universe is God, whatever, however someone may conceptualize, they have a purpose or a mission that it has a purpose or a mission that it's working to accomplish, and we're just a little aspect of we're like an appendage for it to use to accomplish that thing. And so
I've never been described as an appendage. I've had my appendages described, but not myself.
as
I am the appendage of the
I could
universe.
sell an appendage. Yeah. So that being said, we're just this you hear the term a vessel, right? We're a vessel. And so if we don't give ourselves to fulfilling that giving, whatever it might be, then we're just resisting the universe or God or what be it. Yeah, and that's just as bad, so to speak, as the arrogance that we feign fear of.
Yeah. 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 Mm. That's the tricky thing about today's society, though, isn't it? Like we've become so disconnected from like the natural way of things, like nature's.
Yeah.
And I think like before modern society and capitalism, where it feels like we do need to take. We're not just in nature, and we're not just flowing with nature and giving freely because that's what we're here to do, and we're here to just continue in that universal flow, and just what will be. But all of that stuff is now just woo woo, and like, but how do you survive? How do you live in today's world with that mentality? And then it's like, well, we can't even stop to consider the possibility of that, because if we stop to consider the possibility of that, then suddenly there's the fear. It's like, well, how am I going to pay rent? How am I going to put food on it? Like all those practical considerations. And then it's like, well, I can't go with the flow. I've got to go with the status quo. And then we're back to square one. And then we resist the natural giving and the natural order of things.
Yeah.
Which is hard, because a lot of the time, like, we feel just like a little bit. I mean, we won't go too political in this chat, but like something that's been on my mind recently is like petrol prices just went up by like $1 a liter because of the war. And I'm just like I'm just trying to live my life, and then people are making decisions, and it's just like, and now I'm paying $1 a liter extra, and that's a lot of money. That's like, a quarter of my grocery bill that's now been wiped out just because someone or many have just decided that conflict and fighting is necessary, right? And then it comes back to us, and it's like, oh, well, shit, because of that, and because I'm not really in control of my own destiny, now I've got to step away from that flow of things and protect myself, and that kind of fear-based culture. I'm going on a rant, but it somehow has a connection, which I'm hoping you can find.
No, I see what you're saying. I think going back underneath that, there's two really important things there. I think the main issue is that, and this, just to be clear, going back to your point on quote unquote today's society or today's social structure, I think the reality is we've just, as a species, become so addicted to dopamine that everything is materialistic. We feel that we have to have from the external, because you're mentioning we've lost the connection with nature, we've lost the connection with giving, and just that natural flow that is really the way of nature, right? It's the way that the natural world functions as a give and take. important and interesting bit there. The give always comes before the take. So I think that the departure is widely our addiction to dopamine because it's so readily available now. We've enslaved ourselves to it, and then we've also supplied ourselves with it on a constant basis. You can grab your cell phone at any time and take part in all sorts of dopaminergic activities. You can, if you're hungry, you can go into the kitchen and grab whatever you want from the fridge, or go out and use fucking Uber Eats to get whatever you want in 20 minutes. So it's we've kind
Caitlin
of
banned me
primed.
from Uber Eats.
Say that again.
Caitlin, my girlfriend, banned me from Uber Eats. She actually watched me delete the app and cancel my subscription.
Good for her.
She's
That
like,
sounds
I
like
will stay up.
productive
I will stay
relationship.
up until midnight learning how to make your favorite dishes that you would order on Uber
Oh,
Eats.
oh, oh
Then
yeah.
have you paying $10 a month for your Uber Eats subscription, and takeaway is not coming to our door. But anyway, sorry, I digress. But yes, I understand what you mean.
That sounds productive. So yeah, so we have instant access, and we've enslaved ourselves therefore to dopamine. And so, well, that was the first point, and I kind of forgot the second point, but it was also there was something there. But yeah, the dopamine bit is enough in reality. I think just departing from that and having some redeveloping the self-control, so that in order for us to feel spiritually satiated, so to speak, that it doesn't require all of these physiological comforts, and so that we can sit in stillness, we can sit in the absence of stimulus and be well, right? And so then as soon as that's the case, we're not demanding something external for us to be functional, much less happy, then we can ask the question of what can I give? And I, that brought up the second point, which is that I think the reality is we say, okay, well, it didn't work, I've got to come back to the status quo, like you mentioned, and I have to grind out anyway because I tried that and it didn't work. The reality is the status quo is not working either. It's we just pretend it works and we grind at it until we hit rock bottom again, and then we, like you said, it's back to square one. It's an illusion that that's working. It's just that we give into that illusion because it allows us to feed that dopaminergic tendency. And so I think that's the true shift is turning inward. And as soon as we have that power and that autonomy, and that independence from the body needing dopamine or craving dopamine, cheap dopamine that is, as soon as we depart from that, then everything changes. Our ability to give and to create and to gain just goes through the roof. But yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting connection. Just we want the quick fix, and sometimes, yeah, the giving, and it's almost like we're giving freely, and when we're giving, like genuinely, just giving value to the world, there often isn't an immediate reward in doing that, and that's maybe why we're less inclined to do that sometimes, right?
Yeah,
because there isn't that little hit of dopamine. So it's an
that's right.
interesting connection. And that's probably where that the importance of delayed gratification, and you see like the classic studies where you've got kids in the room with the cookie, and then the kids who resist the cookie, and they're told not to eat it, but then the ones that eat it, and then examining later outcomes in life. But we don't have to wait anymore. And I think that's pulling us back from the natural giving, because it's not immediately rewarded. But giving, yeah. And then the deeper layer of giving is like, well, is the motivation love, or is the motivation just love for ourselves, and the expectation, and because like the law of reciprocity, like that will happen regardless. It's that cycle, like it comes back to us at some point, but we want it now because we're so used to everything coming back now.
Right.
You know, it's probably like, I mean, how deep do you want to go? But there's probably layers of like trust and faith, and you know, we always have enough, but we're told we should have more, and then we're just like, we just go chasing the quick fix.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, so I think the big takeaway on that last bit, at least, is that autonomy, the departure from a reliance on instant gratification. You got any other closing thoughts before we wrap this one up?
I mean, we've taken some twists and turns as we navigated that conversation, and I think it really is, like we're probably the closing point around just those quick fixes and just giving freely without expectation. Like, it will come back to us, but that's not the goal. We're giving it because we have something to give. It's not about us, it's about the people who need us. And I guess maybe a topic for future discussion is, what practices keep us centered on that motivation, because that is who we are at our core. Like, we are made out of love, and we're here to love and to be of service. And it's just, what are the things that pull us away from that, and how do we come back to that? That's a topic for another discussion perhaps, but as a takeaway, it's, what's one thing I have to give today, and who's one person that needs that, and cultivating that practice.
Agreed. That's well said. Yeah. So let's go find somebody to give that thing to the rest of the day. In the meantime, drop your thoughts on this discussion, as well as how you practice that giving. Drop it in the comments if you're so willing, and we'd love to hear those. We'll read through all of them. And until the next time, cheers. Ciao for now.
I am the appendage.